back to Hello Friends, my Mr. Robot review show. My name is Kyle, your host. As always, welcome to the Mr. Robot in Review show, the show that started it all. This is episode 19, Collateral Damage. So thank you guys so much for joining me. If this is the first time on the channel, check out the other 18 videos. Check out all the other content we have, like, comment, subscribe. Those sub numbers are rocketing up there, so super excited for that. But I appreciate you guys taking the time. If you haven't seen this before, we're going through each and every episode of Mr. Robot and reviewing. What I'll do is a quick score, a quick recap, and then a score, and then what we call the White Rose Award, which is going to be the favorite actor or actress for that show. So, this is season 2, episode 9, I believe. Season 2 is confusing because, like, part 1 and part 2 are split into 2 episodes technically, but like I think on the Blu-ray it comes as one, and then like the finale is 2 parts, but those are 2 different episodes. So I think we have 11 episodes total. I think it may be 12. I don't know. Either way, there's I think 2 more episodes left after this. So we're getting towards the end here of season 2. Season 2 is supposed to be again the low point of Mr. Robot, but honestly, after watching this episode in this season, I don't agree with that. If this is a low point for Mr. Robot, then what a show. And that's what I thought a lot of this episode. So just a quick recap. We start off with this opening scene. We get Terry Colby, and which is nice to see him because we haven't seen him in a while. And Philip Price, and they're having like a meeting. They're discussing, business as usual. Terry Colby actually goes to leave at the end, and there's this amazing scene where the camera, Terry's like telling him, like, Philip, why do you do this? Like, why, like, what are you in it for? Like, what's your skin in the game here? And the camera just like slowly pans in, and just the cinematography in Mr. Robot, I cannot say enough nice things about it. It's so good. Everything is always off center, as we're doing now. Intentionally or unintentionally, I'm not sure. I'll let you figure that out as the audience. As we are often the audience in Mr. Robot. But seriously, the cinematography it's so clean, and it's so nice, and it's like there's a purpose to every shot. And this is great because the camera slowly pans in, and Michael Christopher, just always an amazing job as Philip Price. He is always like, he has this great speech where he like, Terry's like, why are you doing this? And he takes off his glasses, and he's like, all right. He's like, let me show you my acting chops. And Michael Christopher as Philip Price, he says, this is what history is all about. He's like, these imaginary lines, and he's like marking your territory. And he's like, but honestly, he's like, I ask myself this question. He goes, I've asked myself for a while now, are you the most powerful person in the room? And he's like, the only answer I accept is yes. He's like, the answer has to be yes. And he's like, that's been the answer for every room in the world, with the exception of 2 people. And I think he's talking about president and vice president of the world. I think that's what he was like hinting at. But he's like, every room I step into, he's like, I am the most powerful person in that room. And I'm like, damn, dude, that is such a confident, like, swagger statement where it's like, you gotta love Philip Price's swagger. Like, he bows down to no one. We saw last episode, he talked back to White Rose, which, he may or may not know is White Rose. It's Minister Zhang in that scene, but like, he doesn't bow down to anyone, dude. He doesn't take anyone's shit. And it's like, I love Michael Christopher in this role because he really does like embody Philip Price. Every time Philip Price is on screen, you're listening to his words, like every single word, and he just articulates so well, where it's like he's got the attention of the room every time, and like one of my favorite characters in the whole series. And we may jump back to that later, but that's kind of the opening. They play like this like heavy metal like headbanger, which I'd like turn the volume on my TV down because it was so loud. But like there's an opening scene, Joanna Wellick looking like a damn snack in this episode, dude. There's like a scene where she's like in her lingerie, like dressing up, putting on dress, and I'm like, damn, dude. The actress who plays Joanna Wellick, I might edit it in here. She fine. That's all I gotta say. But she's great. She's always great in that role too. We get a little bit of Joanna. We haven't seen much of her this season, but if you remember last episode, Elliot came home and their SUV was waiting outside. So they kind of kidnapped Elliot, but they basically like forced him into the SUV. They're like, hey, my husband Tyrell is calling me. I know he's safe. Joanna tells this story about how like the earrings that she wears. The first night she met Tyrell, she told him like, you know, I forget how exactly it went down, but basically Tyrell was like, I'll do anything to be with you. And she's like, oh, okay, I need you to go have sex with that woman that has those earrings and get those earrings for me. And he did it. Like, he's like, is this a trap? And then she's like, nah. And he's like, you want me to go have sex with a hot woman and then bring back her earrings to go to a hotter woman? And he's like, Tyrell's like, bro, where's the sign-up sheet? You know what I mean? But that's a cool story, and it just shows you how twisted Joanna is too. She might even be more twisted than Tyrell. But she's like, oh, I wear these earrings all the time. But she's like, that's the least expensive item I own. And I'm like, damn, that's a power move, dude. But Joanna, as we saw, she's struggling financially. Like, she's got her right-hand man, who we get like a nice glimpse into a little bit later on with Elliot, where like we know she's run out of funds. We know she's not getting that check because E Corp is like holding it back. So she's like kind of running on fumes here, but she's still dropping like that swag. She's still dropping the power. She's still like, don't mess with me. There's a great scene with Elliot where she's like, hey, I need you to like hack the phone or find out where these calls are coming from. Elliot's like, yeah, sorry, I can't help you out. And Mr. Robot is like telling him like, this woman's a psycho. Like, you know, we got to stay away from this girl. And he's like about to leave. And then she like goes up to him and she whispers in his ear and she's like, do you really want to say no to me? And I'm like, damn, that's a good scene, dude. Really, really powerful acting in that scene. But we jump ahead. We get this, basically, we remember last episode, Cisco went back to the smart house to get the VHS tape he was mad at Darlene for using, and he saw something off camera. We didn't know what that was. Well, it turns out it was like a dying dude with some nasty internal bleeding. And we find out that like he brings him back to Darlene, and Darlene's like, oh yeah, this is one of the dudes with like the Washington hack or whatever. I think when they chopped off like the bull's nuts, I think that was like the guy she put in charge. He's dying, and Cisco's like, yo, dude, we got to get him to an ER. And this is where I don't like Darlene's character arc, where she's like, no, we can't bring him to the ER. And Cisco's like, dude, this dude is going to die. Like, that's internal bleeding, and he is absolutely going to die. This is an interesting plot because Cisco is playing like the moral compass for Darlene, where Darlene has like, we saw it where she just straight up killed a Madam Executioner, where she knew about the heart problem for sure in the emails, but didn't, just disregarded it when Mobley was like, dude, didn't you see the emails about her heart condition? And she's like, no, I missed them. And it's like, Darlene, we know you're lying because a hacker doesn't miss emails. Like, she doesn't skip over that information. So she's already committed murder. She's kind of going down a slippery slope where she's like, I'll do anything, like whatever it takes to get out of this. So this, it's great writing, because I don't want to say it's bad writing, because it's really not. It's really good, which is why I get upset about the character. Darlene's character is really just going down this slope, and Cisco kind of reels her in here, where Cisco is like, hey, we've been through some shit, like this guy needs to get to the hospital, like no matter what, right or wrong, like the right thing to do here is to drop him off at the ER. Darlene doesn't want to do it initially. Eventually they do bring this guy to the ER. They talk to the nurse and like, oh, we just found him, like, sorry, but she's like, okay, we're gonna run some tests, like, come back in an hour. In the meantime, we get Elliot, who's like, all right, he basically agrees to help Joanna because he doesn't have an option, a choice really, because they're like, we're gonna murder you or worse, like, if you don't help us. And so Elliot's convinced, but he's like, they're in the car. It's like a great shot of Mr. Robot and Elliot, and it's always fun when we see them together because it's like the angel and the devil on the shoulder, basically. And he's like, hey, the cops took all of my hardware because the henchman says, like, we're going to stop at your apartment. And he's like, no. He's like, it's going to be at least weeks before I get that back. He's like, if you want this done tonight, he's like, we need to get some hardware. And so they go to like a Best Buy or like a Radio Shack or whatever. And like, there's a fun little scene where Elliot's going through, he's getting like 5 different prepaid phones, he's getting like all his hardware, he's getting like a laptop. There's like a joke about how E Corp has like a 20% discount if you use E Corp, and he's like, oh, Mr. Robot says, like, if you needed a reason to know like why our work is not done yet, he's like, just look at this. He's like 20% off if you use e-money, which E Corp controls, obviously. So he's like, they still have like a grip of power on there, because like there's a great scene where like everyone's going through and Elliot's like, is this what we like looked for? And there's like a sign that says like $50 ATM limit, and it's just like everyone's using cash. And honestly, I've said this before, but like I just had my old debit card hacked. There's a charge I couldn't verify, so they had to send me a new debit card for 2 days. I had money in my account, I couldn't spend it, and I don't have any cash on me ever. So like I had no way, even though I had money in my account, I had no way to spend it. And so it was only 2 days. Luckily, it was like really quick with the overnight shipping. But for 2 days, I couldn't do anything. I couldn't get gas. I couldn't get food. I couldn't get groceries. Like I couldn't do anything for 2 days. And so that it's funny because I thought of Mr. Robot, where it's like, if something were to happen, if there were a hack to happen, the money that I get every 2 weeks, the direct deposit money that I get, is meaningless if they just wiped it out and the bank just said, yeah, sorry, we don't have any money in your account. And even if I were to be like, hey, I know there's money in there, like I have a direct deposit from my work. If they were like, nah, like that's all hacked, I would just be like, who am I to say no, there should be money in there? You know what I mean? So it's scary. It's fun watching the show like again, and realizing like how relevant it is and how realistic it is, where it's like if something like this were to happen, knock on wood, like a lot of people would be screwed, because like for me, like I have no cash. I think about that line, I think in the first season, where that scene that really sticks out to me, where that woman was like, I've paid my mortgage for 25 years, and she's like, but you have no record of it. She's like, where's your accountability? And it's like, it's true. I mean, I rely on digital bills and digital payments way too much. It's all of my things. All of my bills are digital. I don't get anything in the mail. I pay with everything on my debit card. I don't ever have cash. I haven't had cash for months, if not longer than that. So it's just it's really like scary, but also like really eye-opening, like watching these episodes of Mr. Robot and seeing how something like this could impact the real world. So, which I think is what makes the show so good, is that it's so grounded in reality in a way that it's really not too far-fetched to believe that something like that could happen. But anyway, we basically see that there's a fun scene of Elliot, like, getting all this hardware, and it's like, it would be a funny checkout because like he's got like 5 prepaid phones and like this laptop, and the cashier's probably like, why are you buying five of these prepaid phones? Like, what are you doing? But there's like, Elliot has like a moment where he's like, someone calls him and it's like breathing, and we think it's Tyrell, but it's like a quick scene. Eventually we see like Angela, he runs into Angela on the train, and she's like, hey man, she's like, I'm freaking out, I'm gonna confess. She's like, I'm gonna let them know that I did the hack in E Corp, and she's like, I'm just gonna like take my punishment. And Elliot's freaking out, and she's like, I'm just gonna she's like, why did you start F Society? And Elliot's freaking out, he doesn't say anything, but they like hug on the train, and then they kiss, and like there's always been like a relationship with Elliot and Angela, without spoiling anything. Like, I don't want to jump ahead. So they've always been like childhood friends, but there's always been like kind of a romantic hint there, where it's like, oh, you guys were hanging out, but like Darlene's been in the way, or like, initially it was Elliot's girlfriend. I can't think of her name right now, shame on me. The one that Vera took out, Shayna, I think, maybe. I don't know. If that's wrong, I'll edit the correct name in. But yeah, there's always been something blocking, like whether it's like Angela's first boyfriend, whether they're like, something is always blocking them. But this was nice because they're like kind of losing each other, and like just raw emotion, like they just kiss, but then they don't know like if that felt okay or not. But that was a nice little moment there. So we cut back to Elliot, and the henchman's like looking over him. There's a great scene where he like dumps the Pringles out, and the guy's like, what are you doing? And I was asking the same question. I'm glad he said it on camera. And Elliot's like, I'm, creating a high-powered antenna. So he's like, I can hack someone else's Wi-Fi, so it's not our Wi-Fi. And I'm like, oh, that's really cool. I didn't know that was possible. But it's great too, because like when he dumps the Pringles, like some of them miss the trash. I'm like, such an intentional shot, dude. But it's just great because that guy who plays the henchman, he's really good every time he's on screen. But basically he's like watching Elliot, and Elliot's like going through this like cool montage of trying to like hack in, and he's successful, and he finds out what's going on. And then at the end there, the henchman like he's like trying to have a heart to heart, and Elliot's like, oh, now he wants to have a heart to heart, and he's like, I kind of hope it's Tyrell. He's like, but I kind of hope it's not, because he's like, before Tyrell, I was like, being like a chauffeur, and he's like, one of the dudes used to like masturbate in the car. He's like, I drop him off at Carnegie Hall or whatever. But he's kind of like, I'm cool if I don't work for Tyrell anymore. And so like Elliot eventually finds out where the phone is, and they're like, this is where like the shit starts to build, where like the drama starts to build, where I was like on the edge of my seat, because again, this is probably only my second time watching through from like start to finish. So a lot of these later seasons, especially like I don't remember much. Like I have a general sense of like the whole show, but like a lot of it I haven't seen in years. So like I don't remember every little thing that happens, and there's a lot of little things that I'm picking up on now that I didn't before. And it's really, really fun to watch. So Elliot's like, he finds out where the phone is, because there's actually a really clever scene where he like, he faxes in to the police force that there's like a suicide threat, and he pretends to be a cop, which I'm sure is 100% illegal, but for the purpose of the show, it's great. But basically he's like, hey, he hacks in somehow to like this police officer's phone, and he's like, the calls are blocked, but he's like, if it's a high enough threat, like a suicide threat, which he writes on the form, he's like, the cops will like unblock it for you to give you the address information. So he calls like the PD, and he's like, hey, this is officer blah blah blah, I have this information, this guy says he's gonna shoot himself, like give me the address information. He gets the address information, they find out, and there's a great part where the henchman is like, oh, that's not the address, is it? He's like, Elliot's like, yeah, within 12 meters or whatever. And he's like, that's where the phone is right now? He's like, oh, that's not Tyrell. He's like, he would not be calling from that house. And so then we get a cut to like the FBI breaking in, and that's Cisco's house, which actually gets the APB out for Cisco. There's a quick scene with like Darlene talking to her boss, and her boss is trying to like, again, always like deflect, the like any tracking on like Cisco's contact and stuff. So we'll get more into that later. But basically the FBI shows up at the hospital, and they're like, hey, like we're looking for this guy, and like there's like a composite sketch of Cisco, which is a great drawing. I don't know how anyone ever does that, but basically Dom is like, hey, we got Cisco, like we got fresh evidence on this guy, we're gonna get this dude. And so they go to the hospital, and they're like, hey, did you see this guy? And the nurse is like, yeah, like it was him and like I think his girlfriend, but like they didn't seem too concerned, but I told them to come back in an hour. And so Dom is like, all right, I don't know, like she's like, I don't know where they went, but Dom's like, I'll figure it out. So she goes like outside, and she's like, she asks a random woman, she's like, hey, if I were to like get a bite to eat, she's like, where would I go? And the lady's like, nothing down here, like everything down here is closed, like closest place is like 5 blocks. And like it's cool because we get a shot of Dom across the street, but it's like the brownouts are still happening, so it like cuts to black, and the music is playing, and everything's building. Dom eventually shows up at Lupe's. I think it's called Lupe's. It's like this diner where Cisco and Darlene are, and they're having a good time, and they're relaxed. They think they're good to go. They haven't seen the news, so they don't know like what's going on. That there's like Cisco's face on the news, and there's an APB out for him. There is a mention of what's her name? Is it Francine? I forget. I don't know. There's a mention of a character that shows up later, and I think it's the same character, but I'm not sure, and I'll have to look that up in the editing here. But anyway, Dom shows up. She goes to the diner. She finds Cisco and Darlene. She's like, oh, got him. And right before she goes into the diner, she calls up, and she's like, hey, I need all units to this diner, because she like calls her backup. So really good move by Dom there. But she goes in, the camera is so awesome here because it's like across the street, and it stays across the street, but Dom goes in there, she's like talking to Darlene, talking to Cisco. They're clearly like, they're fucked here. Like she's gonna arrest Cisco, she's found it out. She's already told Angela that she's like gonna connect the dots, and Dom is always like expediting the story because she's all over the shit. But we're like, I don't know what's gonna happen, whether Darlene and Cisco are gonna go or just Cisco. We're like, but they're like, Dom's all over it. And then we did get a quick scene also, I don't want to skip over this. We did get a quick scene of Darlene telling her boss like, hey, if we put this APB out or whatever, Dark Army is going to kill Cisco. Like, she's like, they're gonna kill him. She's like, we can't do this. We need to like get him, like take him and arrest him and like question him. And the guy's like, you know what, we'll look into it. But they just end up putting it on the news. And so Dark Army finds out about that. And so Dark Army, we know they need to protect their secrets at all costs. As we saw, like when Dom's going against them, like they turn the gun on themselves. They erase her history, as she says. Dom shows up there. She goes in there. There's an amazing sequence in the last 2 minutes of the episode where like a motorcycle pulls up for Dark Army. Motorcycle parks at the front of the screen. The guy walks up with like an AK-47 or whatever. He walks across the whole street. The one part I didn't like about this scene is that like Dom is looking out the window, and at the last second she does duck, but like this dude with an AK like walks up, but he's like clearly walking like right towards the window. And he walks a bit, so like you think Dom would give a little bit more of a heads up, but I know she was probably talking to Cisco or Darlene, so maybe she didn't see it, but like she is looking out the window and she sees just a dude with like, the gun is pretty clear, walking up, and at the very last second, like it is actually really, really well shot because Dom is standing like above them. She ducks at the last second, and the gun opens fire on Cisco, and you can see in the shot, I actually rewound the shot, Cisco just gets murked right here. Cisco is done, but Darlene is able to duck. So we think that's the end of Cisco, and I believe it is. I don't think we ever see him again. I think he just clearly gets murdered there. But like Dom either comes back out or fires at them, but I think Dom ducks and then like comes back out. But like basically Cisco's taken out, Dark Army took them out, and then like the gunner gets hurt, so he's like trying to limp back to the motorcycle. But he's not going to make it in time. The cops show up right after there. This is all shot in one shot, so it's super cool editing. And then like the guy going back to the motorcycle, I think the motorcycle's already taken off, but he knows he's not going to make it. And so he actually does turn the gun on himself again as the cops are surrounding him and kills himself, which is like what the Dark Army does. They're so loyal where they will always kill themselves before giving up being captured. And then Dom is kind of in shock there, and you know she's looking off, and that's the end of the scene. And what an ending to the episode! What a finish! This is all within like 2 minutes, and I remembered as soon as I saw them go to the diner, I did remember this part, and I was like, oh, this is that episode. And it's just so crazy, and the way it ends on a cliffhanger like that, and just a shocking moment. You're like, what? And you just gotta wait for next week when this was coming out, and it's crazy. So yeah, super great ending to this one. So I gotta admit, for a lot of this episode, I was like, this episode is okay. This kind of feels like a down episode. We get a scene I don't think I touched on earlier where Darlene tells this weird story about how she went to Coney Island with her parents when she was little, and she like got lost, and then she got like kidnapped by this woman, and this woman asked her like, you know, what's your favorite ice cream flavor? She's like, you get whatever you want, and she brings her home, and she's like, hey, this is your bed. There's like curtains around it. Darlene's like, this is the first time I've ever felt special. But then like the next day, they must have reported kidnapping or whatever because like the police get her, and like that woman's arrested or whatever, and Darlene's brought back to her parents. But she's like, that's the first time I got Elliot, and she's like, I kind of wanted to stay with that woman, but I would have never run into Elliot. So that was cool, but it was kind of a weird story. I was like, she was telling it, and it was really shot really well, but I was like, this woman just like, she just kidnapped a random girl? Like, I don't know. It was strange. I don't know if they ever come back to that, but basically that's like the origin story, I guess, of Elliot. But Darlene, it's kind of sad because Darlene is admitting that she like doesn't like her parents there. But anyway, yeah, this episode was kind of slow, and then like the last like 15 or 20 minutes is just like hit after hit after hit where it's like shit is just building, and it's crazy because like things start escalating where the FBI is looking at the hospital, and Cisco and Darlene, they think they're in the clear, and they're finally relaxed, and they're finally having a good time. And just poor Cisco, like, you know, the shit is just coming for him, and Dark Army takes him out, and then it's just a crazy ending. And, you know, between Angela, like, being like, I'm gonna admit that I, like, hacked E-Corp, and, she's like, I would never rat you out. I think she tells Elliot, like, I'm never gonna give up anyone, but she's like, I need to do this for me, like, I'm gonna turn myself in. And it's just crazy to see, like, how everything's kind of coming together, and still kind of unraveling from season 2, and things are not going according to plan for F Society or anyone involved to that. So the good guys are definitely winning here, although sometimes I find myself rooting for F Society and everyone involved because the characters are so likable. And even though I don't like Darlene's path, the way she's going on, Carly Chaikin's interpretation of that character is so good that you have to kind of root for her as well. But she is making some questionable choices for sure. So for a score for this one, guys, I gotta give it a 9.3. It's, again, it started slow, but like the last like 15-20 minutes are so good. From the point where Elliot finds out where that phone is being held, and the guy is like, oh, it's not coming. He's like, you sure that's the address? He's like, it's not coming from that address. And then I was like, oh shit, what does that mean? I was like, are we gonna get a big reveal right here? And then we get the FBI breaking in, then we get the FBI at the hospital, then we get the Dark Army shootout, and like things are just like, they just keep going, and it's like, it's crazy. And I'm like, man, this show is so fucking good. It's so good. This is like a downer episode, and I had to give it such a high score because the second half of the episode is so good, where I'm just like, man, this show, it's hard to, it never misses. Like it's hard to get a really, like a genuinely bad episode where you think you wasted your time. This one was a little bit slower, but it just picks up, and it's like, man, so much shit happened in the last 20 minutes where it's like the repercussions and the ramifications of all of those events are crazy. And it's just, I just love this show. And I was just watching the show in awe of just being like, man, this is such a great show with like music and cinematography, and the acting is just outrageously good by everyone on screen. And it's just, I'm just so happy to review it, and so happy to check it out and be able to put my 2 cents into this show I care so much about. So the White Rose for me for this week, it's going to be a back-to-back winner. Actually, he was only in one scene, just the opening scene, but I don't base it on screen time. I base it on who I think stood out the most in this episode. And although Joanna had a stronger-ish episode, and I always like Joanna, this one is going to Michael Christopher as Philip Price for the second episode in a row, because last week we got the amazing like umbrella scene where he talks back to White Rose and Mr. Zhang. This week it's just him and Terry Colby. Always nice to see them. And Terry Colby, you know, he's got a loud mouth, and he doesn't really, you know, bow down to anyone either. But we see Philip Price go against like these big names. Terry Colby is the Minister Zhangs, and like he doesn't bow down to anyone, dude. He doesn't take any shit. And I love Michael Christopher. He just delivers that sequence where it zooms in and he gives that speech where he's like, I need to be the most powerful person in the room, and the answer needs to be yes. I'm like, that's so cool. And he's just so confident in that character. And you're like, Philip Price is going to get shit done no matter what the cost. And you just know that like he's taking that character to the next level, the level it needs to be. So hats off to Michael Christopher. He just controls the room. He really does. Like every single scene he's in, I have to rewind if I miss any like sentence, because I'm like, he just controls the absolute scene and dominates, and he adds so much to the show that a lot of actors I don't think can possibly even dream about doing in that role. So a shout out to Michael Christopher, back-to-back White Roses for Philip Price. So adding to a strong season, and just there's more to come for him. I do remember that a little bit, but I'm really excited to see how that plays out and kind of going forward what the show turns into, or kind of what I remember versus like most of this, which is kind of like a new experience to me. So it should be a good time going forward. But that's it, guys. That's episode 19 of Hello Friends. So thank you guys so much again for joining me. As always, like, comment, subscribe. Like I said earlier, the subscription numbers are going way up. We've pretty much doubled the subscribers in the last couple of days, so that's been awesome to see. Only way to go is up, guys. Sky's the limit. So I'm super excited to do this. I'm as we get closer and closer, I can't wait to hit those big moments. This one I was really excited about, the diner scene. I remember that diner scene. But yeah, there's like iconic Mr. Robot moments that I'm like waiting for, I think next season and then in the final season, and I can't wait. A little sad how quick it's going. We are like almost halfway now. I think next week will be episode 20, and I think there are 45 total episodes, so we're getting close to halfway, but still plenty of content to come. I'm having a blast. Thank you guys so much. The Mr. Robot videos always seem to do well on the channel, so I really appreciate the support, guys. I know there's a lot of people out there like me that love the show, so I'm glad we can all kind of come together and in these tough times, not only in Mr. Robot but in the real world, and and find something to bond over. So thank you guys so much. This has been another episode of Hello Friends. And until next time, guys, goodbye, friend.